tuning back into another episode of another hip hop podcast. And today we're going to be talking about, like I said before, we're going to be going over Tupac's album list. So we're going to break these down and I'm going to rank them from classic, great, good, average, and bad. But the thing is, before I start, these last three I will not go over. So Pac's Life, Loyal to the Game, and Better Days. I'm not going over these because they have new production on them. They took over old tracks and placed new ones on them. So I'm not really a fan of that, keep the songs original. And also he didn't have any creative input in these albums. So I'm not going to do these. It seemed like these were just kind of like a money grab albums and not really a fan of them. But these last two, Are You Still Down and Until the End of Time, I will rank those because they were songs made during the time of creating an album that didn't make the list. I guess the final cut, you can sort of say. But these albums was actually pretty good. They kept the songs in their original state, and so I definitely will put those on the list. But we're gonna be starting off with, I'm gonna go through Tupac's album from 1 all the way to his death. So I'm gonna go over Tupacalypse Now. Now, this album is known for songs like Brenda's Got a Baby, Trapped, When My Homies Call. Kind of standout songs for Tupac at that time, especially for him just releasing his debut album. These songs were pretty good, actually, but the album overall was definitely not that good. His flow was kind of outdated. The production was definitely not good at all. Very subpar production. But it was a good first effort for Tupac, I felt, because he was still pretty young at that time. If I remember correctly, when he released his album, maybe like in his early 20s, maybe like 2019 or something like that. So he was kind of still developing at that time, but looking back at the album, listening to it fresh, it's very outdated, very forgettable album. It's not an album I would recommend to somebody to listen to if they wanted to listen to Tupac. Maybe some of the songs on there, but the project as a whole, I would definitely not consider this to somebody as a first option to listen to. I think this will be more of an album for hardcore Tupac fans to listen to and go back and see his progression from where he ended and see how he started as a rapper. So for this album, I'm gonna give it an average because it's not terrible, but it's not good. It just made the cut, But yeah, that's for Tupacalypse Now. Alright, I'm gonna go over Strictly for My Niggas, which is Tupac's second album. This album is pretty popular for his songs Holla If You Hear Me, and of course the smash banger I Get Around, which were two major songs on that album. But he had some good guests on this album: Ice Cube, Ice-T, with some major artists on the album. Also had a lot of Thug Life artists on this album as well. People that he rode with was on this album. But overall, this album was okay. It was okay. This album is an example of what Tupac was going through when he kept getting arrested around that time. He was just going crazy, the Thug Life and spitting at the camera. Like this is the gist of that era of Tupac and his career, when he was just real rebellious, just doing everything for attention, just going crazy. This album, if you listen to it, you can understand what Tupac was going through at that time. It's very political, it's very rebellious. He does say a lot of key things, and he was still sticking to his roots on this album, those Black Panther roots. But the thing I didn't like about this album, the production is very dated. It's not a timeless album. The lyrics are, but the beats aren't. The beats are very trash. They're very bland. The production was just so garbage. I don't know who was making beats on this. I Get Around is obviously the best beat on this album by far. But I do like the songs on this album. But to the average person, they probably won't consider this too high. But I'm gonna just give it a good rating. Alright, now this is the third album from Tupac, Me Against the World. This was his standout album where he basically crossed over to mainstream. Me Against the World is a really good album. The production is timeless on this album. He has very classic songs on this album. Dear Mama, Me Against the World. This was the album that took Tupac over the hills. I really enjoyed this album. I feel like Tupac was trying to be a little bit more lyrical on this album. I think he was getting criticized for that because East Coast rappers were known for being lyrical and West Coast rappers weren't. So I like how the fact that Tupac was trying to close that stigma that was placed on West Coast rappers for not being lyrical but just having good beats. And he definitely delivered on both of these at that time. And he did pay homage to hip-hop artists too as well with the song Old School, which I thought was kind of unique that he would do that on this type of album. You know, this is a great album for Tupac, displaying what he brings to music. And after this album, like Tupac, I think he finally found his niche. He found his voice on this album. I don't necessarily think it's a classic. There is some songs on here I probably would have left off, just in my personal opinion, but we can discuss that later. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get this album on the great list. Alright, Tupac, All Eyes on Me, which is my personal favorite one, and it's a double disc album. I really don't think this album had any fillers. There was a lot of tracks on this one. I don't think it had any fillers, to be honest with you. It was a couple tracks that could have been left off, but it wasn't a lot of fillers like a Jay-Z double disc album with Blueprint 2 or a Nas Streets Disciple album. This one was complete from top to bottom. Some of the best production from the West Coast period, with legendary producers on this one like Daz, Dr. Dre, DJ Quick were just killing the production on this album. Tupac was definitely at his best on this album, and I feel like this album shows his creativity in and out from his deep thought perspective on these records. And I think this album is Tupac as a whole, as a person. There's nothing else you can ask for from this man. Like this was just great in and out. Give this that 5 mic classic rating. Machiavelli, this came out after Tupac had died, and this is a real controversial album. The message on this album was really deep, and I remember the original version that had came out was different than the final one that they made, because I think they took off a lot of tracks on the original Machiavelli that had came out, and then they released the version that you see here. But this album is so deep. This shows a whole different perspective of Tupac. Like the songs, the production on this album was great. The lyricism on this album were great. I think Tupac stepped it up a whole nother tier on this album. It's almost like Jordan's 96 run. It was just unbelievable. Every track, man. Like he didn't waste a line, he didn't waste a bar or anything on this song, and he was coming at everybody. Like it was like this album should have been called Me Against the World, because he was literally coming after everybody on this album. And this is Tupac at his second best, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people think this is his best record, but for me personally, I think it's his second best record and his second classic album. It's timeless, and there's nothing bad I can say about this album. Maybe Jodeci sang too long on that one song is the only complaint I have. But besides that, this is Tupac's second classic album. Are You Still Down? Now, this was another double disc as well, and this was a really good album. These were a lot of throwaway tracks, I believe, from 92 to 93, maybe a little bit of 94 that he created. And you can tell by the production too, and you can tell by his voice that these were made during a spree of probably like 3 years, because some of the beats sound real dated. Some of the beats sound like a little bit more updated to the point where that was on his Me Against the World album, which had better beats. I think that's where he made a step up. There was a lot of standout songs on this album that I really appreciate. I thought this was a really good album that they put together. I know Tupac's mother had a hand in putting these songs together for this album. If this was released, if he made it, even though he made it like this, so to speak, I still would have gave it the same rating I would have today. I'm gonna give this a good rating. Almost to the tier of great. And Tupac's Until the End of Time, this came out around the early 2000s. This was an okay album. I wasn't really impressed with it. I didn't really like a lot of the production on this beat, on this project. He does have some standout songs on this album, but I didn't really enjoy Until the End of Time like that. I listened probably to it 2 times max and really didn't enjoy it that much. I did listen to it within the last year just to refresh my memory, just to see if there were some songs that I probably missed or over skipped, and still not impressed with that project. I'm gonna give it an average. I'm not holding it against Tupac particularly because he didn't have a hand in putting this. It was more like I think it was Tupac's mother's record label put this album together, some hidden tracks that he had during the Death Row era. But yeah, like I said, I'm not rating these last three albums. Don't care for them. But yeah, that's my list. I don't really think Tupac dropped a bad album. I think Tupacalypse Now will probably be the closest to it, but the songs that were good on that album were really good, which is why I can't give it a bad rating. But that's it.